The morning began like any other in the busy heart of a city, filled with fast footsteps and loud noises, yet something unusual was about to unfold in a way no one could have predicted. A billionaire known across the city for his cold and distant personality stepped out of his sleek car and walked toward a small cafe on the corner of an old street. His name was Adrian Cole, a man who had everything that wealth could buy yet nothing that truly warmed the human heart. He lived in tall towers, ate expensive meals, traveled in private jets, yet felt an emptiness that money could never heal. On this warm day, he felt unusually restless, and for the first time in a long while, he wanted to taste something ordinary, something simple, something that belonged to the world outside his luxury-filled life. So he stopped at a street vendor table where pastries were kept in small paper wrappers, and he picked one up without any hesitation. Before the pastry touched his lips, a frail little girl standing barefoot on the hot pavement rushed toward him with a fear in her eyes that could stop anyone in their tracks. Her name was Mira, a young beggar girl no older than 8 with tangled hair and bruised feet, yet with a strong instinct to sense danger. She tried to shout a warning, telling him not to eat the pastry, for she had seen something that others had missed. She had seen a stranger slip a harmful powder into one of the wrappers earlier when the vendor was busy arguing with another customer. Mira had lived on the streets long enough to understand that small details often meant life or death. She reacted out of pure instinct, out of kindness, out of the desire to protect another human, even though she expected nothing in return. Adrian barely noticed her as his mind was lost in his own thoughts and frustrations with life. He was a man who never listened to strangers, and especially not to someone who looked as desperate and fragile as Mira. The city was full of people asking for help or attention, and he had learned to ignore them all. Yet everything changed in one instant when the wind lifted the small paper wrapper from his hand and carried it onto the ground. As he bent to pick it up, he saw a strange grainy substance stuck inside the folds, something unnatural, something that did not belong in food. His heartbeat slowed as his eyes focused sharply, and he realized that the little girl had not been trying to disturb him. She had been trying to save him. This moment struck him harder than anything he had felt in years. A child dressed in torn clothes with empty hands had shown more genuine concern for him than any of the powerful people around him ever had. Adrian lowered the pastry and looked around, but the stranger who had tampered with the food had already disappeared into the crowd. For the first time in a long while, Adrian felt a chill of vulnerability. He could have been harmed in the middle of daylight, surrounded by people, and only this little girl had noticed the danger. He stood still, trying to process the truth, while Mira stepped back quietly, unsure if she had done enough or if she was about to be scolded. In the next minute, Adrian felt something he had long forgotten. A weight inside his chest shifted as if an unseen door had opened from within. He walked a few steps closer to the girl and studied her condition. Her face was covered with dust, her hair dry, and uncombed, her arms thin and weak, yet her eyes still held a light of courage. She was used to being ignored by the world, yet she had not ignored him. She had stepped forward to warn him, even though she could have simply walked away. Adrian felt a strange blend of guilt, gratitude, and curiosity. No wealth, no status, no luxury had given him this feeling before. It was something raw, something human, something he had been missing. Mira, however, did not wait for him to speak. She slowly turned away and tried to return to her small spot near the trash bins where she usually sat with her younger brother, who was too sick to move much. She believed that her small act was enough and that the man would forget her existence within minutes, just as everyone else always did. Adrian watched her walk barefoot on the burning pavement, and each step of hers seemed to echo deeply inside him. He followed her from a distance, and what he saw shifted his perspective entirely. Mira walked toward a tiny shadowed corner behind an old bakery where a small boy lay on a torn cloth, breathing weakly. She sat beside him, gently touched his forehead, and whispered soothingly with all the care of a mother. She tore a piece of stale bread in two and gave the larger portion to him, while taking only a small bite for herself. Adrian had never witnessed love in such raw form. A starving girl sharing her only food with someone she loved more than herself. It was a sight that broke the walls around his heart piece by piece. He stood there silently taking in what he had ignored for years. He had spent millions on parties, investments, and luxury, but he had never seen anyone give so much while having so little. Mira noticed him and froze for a moment, thinking she had done something wrong. Yet Adrian simply looked at her with a gaze she had never seen in an adult before. It was a gaze filled with respect and a quiet sense of awakening. He asked himself questions he had never asked. How many children like her were suffering around him while he lived in comfort? How many warnings had life given him that he had ignored? How many chances had he missed to be a better human? The questions weighed heavily on him, and for once he did not run from them. He sat down on the floor beside Mira and her brother, something he had never imagined himself doing. The world around him blurred as he focused only on the two children in front of him. The city noise faded, and what remained was the heartbeat of a moment that changed everything. Adrian realized that he needed to help them, and not just for one day. He needed to change himself as well. He picked up the boy carefully and told Mira to follow him. She hesitated, unsure whether to trust him, but the desperation for her brother's health pushed her forward. Adrian took them both to a clinic near by, where the doctor examined the boy and confirmed severe malnutrition and infection. Adrian felt anger rise within him, not at the children, but at the world that allowed such suffering to exist. He paid for immediate treatment and stayed there watching over them until he knew they would be safe. Mira sat quietly by his side, still confused by the sudden shift in her fate. Over the next few days, Adrian returned again and again. Something had changed permanently inside him. He arranged proper food, clean clothes, and safe shelter for Mira and her brother. He contacted organizations that could help more children like them, and he funded programs for food and health care across the city. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of purpose that was not tied to wealth or status. It was tied to humanity. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe so these messages of kindness reach more people. As the days passed, Mira smiled more often, her brother recovered slowly, and Adrian found himself visiting them simply to sit with them and listen. The silence between them was warm, not heavy. He felt lighter, as if the burden of his lonely life had been lifted and replaced with something real. He realized he had been starving too, not for food, but for connection and purpose. Before the story ends, please write one word in the comments that describes how this story made you feel. And so the little girl who saved a stranger became the reason a powerful man rediscovered his humanity, proving that sometimes the smallest voice can make the biggest change in the world.